What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Today I have a very exclusive look at Paragon Alpha gameplay. Yes, this is a world's first Murdock gameplay. I also have Gideon, Twinblast, Sparrow, Steel all coming at you guys. So be sure to check those out on my channel. So this is me playing as Murdock. On my team we had Steel, Rampage, Twinblast and Sparrow. When you start the game, you initially get two upgrade options. The first one is to upgrade an ability. So usually for Murdock, I go for Explosive Shot just because it gives that AoE damage. And for my card, I usually go for a health potion and a mana potion. But because I was building my own deck and I was in a rush because everyone else was waiting on me, I kind of forgot to add those to my deck. So instead, I went to go for Micro Nuke, I believe. This gave me a great advantage because it gave me plus 15.2 damage, I think, damage increase. So that was great. Apart from the fact I had to keep going back home every time I was like under half health. So I definitely advise all these well, not even the new players. I definitely advise everyone picking up a health potion and a mana potion. That's something that you should definitely be getting. Me and my team, we were quite well coordinated because Epic provided us with headsets throughout the game. So I decided that I would solo left lane because I felt that ranged characters could easily solo lane. So characters like Sparrow, Gideon, Twinblast, Murdock, they could easily solo lane because most of them have some sort of AoE damage, so it's really easy to destroy minions, and especially at higher levels you're just killing minions basically with one ability. So this is me as Murdock bunny hopping around. You can just see how beautiful the game is. You got the jungle on the right and the enemy tower straight ahead. This is like a good platform because you've got the high ground, so you can shoot down, and it's difficult for people to shoot up and gain visibility of what's happening just because of the way it's laid out. So I always try and keep the high ground. One thing to remember in Paragon is that last hitting is a big factor, especially in the early game. You want to try and get the last shot on minions so you can get that extra amber. The way it works is when you kill a minion, if you last hit the minion, you'll get 6 additional amber orbs. So say a minion dies from another minion, he'll drop 2 amber orbs on the floor, which you can go and pick up. But if you last hit the minion, then you'll get not only those 2 amber orbs, you'll get another 6 and they'll come flying towards you. So you don't really have to risk running out, grabbing the amber when it could be dangerous. They just come flying to you. I think this is a great feature because when a friendly minion dies, they drop this black orbs. That's actually the enemy's amber. So if you can deny the enemy their amber, you can gain a significant advantage. And any advantage in these kind of games is a huge one. Once you start to get ahead, you really can pull away, and then there's nothing the enemy team can really do. Because it was basically me by myself against Sparrow and Rampage, I got Steel to come over and give me some help. I noticed that Sparrow was being quite aggressive and Rampage was, standing behind, whereas it should have been the opposite because Rampage should be absorbing as much damage as possible, letting Sparrow deal all the damage. Like me and Steel were, I let Steel go in front to try and absorb as much damage as possible, and then I was dealing damage from behind, shooting through Steel's shield. This is something you can use to your advantage in Paragon. Using combos between different characters, it provides a huge advantage, and I think Paragon have really designed the game well to implement that. In this game, Sparrow was playing really aggressive, and Rampage wasn't really protecting her as much as he or she could have. So I got Steel to go around the back, and potentially we could pick up some kills by flanking them. So Steel's coming around the back, and he throws down a shield. Now, if any of these enemy heroes pass through the shield, they'll be slowed, and we use this to our advantage because it basically slowed them both down. We could focus fire on Sparrow, and Rampage didn't really have any chance of protecting her. Now that Sparrow's dead, we could just push lane as much as possible. We've got a huge advantage because it's 2v1. Steel and Murdock are a great combination together, so we really just push as much as possible. Rampage can't really do anything about it. So as you can already see, it's quite important to use teamwork. Steel and Murdock are great together. Rampage and Sparrow are pretty good together. Rampage and Murdock are also good together. Muriel and Deck are using them as support. It really makes a big difference. At first, in the first few alphas, it wasn't that big of a difference. Like, I didn't find Decker was, you could 2v1 a Decker and another hero, and it wasn't really helping that much. But now I feel like you need a support, or if you have a support or a tank, there's definitely a huge advantage now, and I think that's how the game should be. It makes 2v2s fun, or 2v1s a lot more interesting. So I'm upgrading my cards, and as you saw, I always go for damage increasing cards for these characters. So for the DPS characters, I always try and stack as much damage as possible, and then towards the later game I stack some health, mainly because I run out of damage cards. But I feel like as you get closer to the core, the combat becomes a lot closer. You don't have a chance to escape, so you really just want to increase your durability. Here we decide to go for the red camp so that I can get the damage increase buff. You want to try and get this as soon as possible, but you want to really use a tank to absorb the damage from these minions. Just because if I'd gone solo, I'd probably end up on under half health, and then having the orb, there's no point going into combat because I'd probably die and just lose it. So you want to use, especially early game, you want to use the tank. Whereas late game, you could probably kill the minions in like 2-3 shots, so you can go solo. Now that I've got the damage increase orb, there's nothing Sparrow can really do once I lay into her. I've got Steel to flank her, and now she's got no chance. She falls into my trap, so she's slowed, and now I'm just doing straight damage, nothing she can do. Rampage left her alone, so we pick off another kill, and we can continue to push lane. Now that we've killed Sparrow twice, I feel like we're quite far ahead. At this point, you really want to start pushing the tower, especially because the bonus XP it gives you, the card XP it gets you. You do get a lot of card XP. I think when you destroy a tower, you should, at this stage, get another 3 card points. So you'll be able to fully upgrade a card. I've already got 9 points spent and 6 points to spend on a card. So I could fully upgrade a card and get another card. Destroying the tower, I should get another 3 points. But Rampage manages to stop us. You want to try not to get sucked in to dealing damage to an enemy hero while within tower range. You can see the tower range on the floor here. These are like the symbols on the floor. When you pass through those symbols, that means you're within tower range. If you deal damage to the enemy hero while within tower range, the tower's going to start attacking you. I think it does like increasing damage, so it does one shot, you take a certain amount of damage. The second shot does even more damage. The third shot does the highest amount of damage, so you really want to like back up from there as soon as possible. The way the map is set up is that while you're pushing the tower, you could easily get flanked, so I advise having like a ward there, or I usually put a trap so that if someone's coming from behind, they'll run into my trap and it gives me a chance to escape or to try to kill them. Because I had the red orb, if I was going to get flanked, I'd probably be at an advantage because I could probably kill them a lot quicker. But with still returning to base, the smarter move was to go home and upgrade my cards. Considering I had 9 points, I should probably go and spend them. As you may have seen in my other videos, it's always important to fully upgrade a card first and then move on to another card. So like you saw, I upgraded Micronuke with 3 cards so I could get the maxed bonus, and then I moved on to my next card. You really want that maxed bonus because it essentially acts as a 5th card. So I've only selected 4 cards, but I've got the bonuses of 5 cards. So it's really beneficial to always max out your cards. That's something I noticed a lot of people didn't know or weren't paying attention to. They'd pick a variety of different cards, but they'd find themselves falling behind. That's because every time I'd upgrade a card, it's essentially an extra card. So just a tip for you guys, always focus on upgrading your card first and then moving on to the next card. At this point, I feel like I'm quite far ahead. So I'm more aggressive. I feel like I'm taking a lot of health of Rampage. So he's really starting to back up. I think we have the advantage here. So it's probably wise to push the tower. He falls into my trap and I use my ultimate, but I'm just a bit too slow and I miss. With Murdock's ultimate, it's best to use some kind of synergy. So using a trap or using like Rampage has the ability to throw a rock and stun people in position. You want to try and use your ultimate then, because if you miss your ultimate, like you saw, it's really easy to dodge because Murdock fires a beam first and then he lets off the shot, so it's easy to dodge. So I was talking to the developers about this and they said something a lot of the developers ended up doing while they were playing the game was using Murdock's ultimate to just kill a load of minions. Using Murdock's ultimate, essentially just like one-shotting minions. So you could kill like a wave of minions, and if the minions pile up, so like there's 2 or 3 groups of minions, you can just one-shot all of them. You get a shit ton of amber. So it depends. If you feel like you can get your shot off on an enemy hero, then definitely use your ultimate on that. Or if it's beneficial to clear a wave of minions, use your ultimate on that. I felt like I was pretty far ahead, but I know there's 3 of them, so I don't really have a chance. They all left Sparrow, so now I have a good chance to kill Sparrow. You can see Rampage in the background. I think the animation is bugged. That's what they were saying. There's some kind of bug with the animation, so I'm sure they'll fix that. As you can notice, I'm already level 7. Sparrow's only level 6, so that's not a huge advantage, but it's a pretty good advantage. Sparrow fires off her ultimate, and I'm doing my best to dodge it. Instead, she goes for minions, which is a real waste because Sparrow's ultimate would have surely killed me had she got all her shots off. I was talking to the developers about Sparrow, and something that I didn't even notice until he told me was that the 3 shots that Sparrow does for her ultimate actually do different amounts of damage. The middle arrow does 20% more damage than the outer 2. This is something I would have never noticed, so you definitely want to take advantage of this fact that a lot of people won't know. You may have noticed how much I talk about flanking, and Sparrow's flanking Sparrow here. We get such an easy kill, it's so effortless. Flanking in this game is a huge deal. I think we'll start to see a lot of players using wards, which is an active card that allows you to place a ward to grant vision of certain areas. Having the vision allows you to see who's going to flank you or where an enemy is, if they're vulnerable. I think that's a great asset to have, especially in the early game when you tend to get flanked a lot more often. Also, if you're wondering why I'm constantly checking the leaderboard, it's not because I need to know how many kills or deaths I got, which is, by the way, in the top left of the screen. It goes kills, deaths, and assists. I check the scoreboard because I want to see how upgraded the enemies are, what kind of cards they're picking. I think that's something you really want to get used to doing, seeing how far ahead or how far behind your enemy opponent is in your lane, so you can either push, play more aggressive, play more defensive, really use that to your advantage, the fact that you can see what cards they're picking. Now I've got the red orb, I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to kill someone, but Howitzer and Twinblast are such a great combo together. It's really difficult to get close, especially with the abilities Howitzer has and the abilities Twinblast have, especially that Nitro where he gets attack speed increase. It's really, really difficult, and I'm pretty sure I'll struggle 2v1. So Sparrow joins me and she comes from behind, but it's a little too late because Twinblast came from behind and absolutely destroys me. Here's a great example of why a ward would have been useful. Had I put a ward there, I would have been able to see Twinblast coming around the back, and I could have easily dodged it, or I could have fled. But because I didn't pick a ward, mana potion, or a health potion in my deck, I couldn't choose them, which was a bit stupid of me. Luckily for me, that was my only death in the game, so you guys get to see my 10 kill streak now. One thing I like about the fact that when you die, not that I like dying, but you have the ability to pick your cards while you're dead. So this really speeds up the game. You can pick your cards while you're waiting for your respawn timer to hit 0, and then you're just ready to go. Twinblast manages to get the tower in my lane, but you can see on the right of my screen that there are 2 blue icons heading straight towards him. I like the fact that you have vision of where your enemies are or where your teammates are. I think if your teammates have vision of the enemy like they have now, you get to see the orange icon even though you don't have direct vision of him. So Steel and Rampage are attacking Twinblast, but they do next to no damage, so while they're holding him off and delaying him from returning to base, it gives me time to come in and just absolutely destroy him. You'll notice that he drops a red orb. This is the red orb that he got from killing me, so now I get it back. You can see the timer has reset 150 seconds again. That's one of the things I really like about Paragon. He killed me and took my orb, but when I kill him, I get my orb straight back with a fresh timer. That's revenge, bitch. Here we go for the Black Camp. The Black Camp provides you with attack speed increase and increased tower damage or structure damage. The Black Tower is, I feel like, the strongest tower out of the 4 towers, excluding the Prime Helix. So I usually go with a tank to absorb as much damage. Just like I mentioned, I didn't have a health potion, so I didn't really want to waste time going back, recharging my health, and then having to run all the way back. If you're interested to learn more about the jungle, the orb camps, the Prime Helix, click the annotation here or check out the jungle video on my channel. Now that we've got the black orb, it only makes sense to push the tower. Since I can do an increased amount of damage, we should be able to quickly take this tower and pull back if we need to, or push forward towards the inhibitor. You can see Steel trying to come and stop us, but because of the increased damage, we destroyed the tower so quickly, he's got no chance. Because I was so focused on the action, I didn't even realize I was getting flanked by Twinblast. Luckily, Steel throws down a shield. I jump through the shield, which absorbs all of the damage. Rampage goes and attacks Twinblast to absorb more of the damage, and we pick Twinblast off. That was probably the best moment we had all day of like just the teamwork, the way all the abilities come together. Steel using his shield, Rampage using his ultimate, and me just dealing damage, and all of us managed to survive. Now that Twinblast is out of the equation, my team could push the inhibitor, but because I'm so low on health, I decided to go back to base. It's not worth losing the 2 orbs to an enemy player. Again, I just decided to stack more and more damage. I think towards the end of the game, when I was at the core, I decided to stack some health just because it's close quarters combat. You need that health in the late game, as I mentioned, especially because you've got characters like Twinblast that do insane amount of damage. Getting too close to them is really deadly. You may have noticed that it does take a while to rejoin the action if you teleport back. I think it's a fair penalty because you're going back to base to upgrade yourself. However, I would like to see some movement speed cards. I think they did include them in one online test, but I haven't seen any since. That may be just because I haven't opened enough card packs or because they took them out the game, but it would be cool to have the option to increase your movement speed. I think the problem with increasing movement speed in these kind of games, especially with the way it's set in 3D space, is it gets a lot harder to hit targets if they're moving a lot faster. Here's one of the big team fights that take place in the game. Like I said, getting close to Twinblast is really deadly. Steel throws down his shield. We manage to pick off the enemy Steel. Traveling through the enemy Steel's shield, you'll notice that you get slowed, so you have to be quite careful when you go through it. Luckily, I managed to make it out alive. I think if Twinblast got one more shot on me, I'd be dead. Thankfully, our Twinblast uses his ultimate ability to take out Twinblast. That was perfect play. I lured Twinblast towards me and he just picked him off. Again, I'm on low health, and because I didn't have a fucking health potion, I had to return to base. But not without using my ultimate. I really wanted to use it before I went back to base, just because when I'm at base, my mana would recharge and I could run the cooldown down while I was running back to battle. Here you can see I take out a whole wave of minions using my ultimate. My aim could have been better, but look at the amount of card XP I get, 720. That means now I get to go back to base and upgrade a card rather than just going back to recharge my health. So it makes it more worth it. And just to be safe, I always run a fair distance away from the enemy so that I can teleport home peacefully without having to, take damage or end up dead. Now we're getting to the point where we are close to pushing the enemy core. We've got 2 towers left and then the inhibitors. The inhibitors tend to lead to a lot of close quarters combat, so around this time, if you haven't already, you want to get some health. I go for the Staff of Adamant, which provides energy damage and health. One thing you may not know is that these 2 characteristics determines what kind of upgrades I can apply. If I apply a card which has energy damage and health, I can only apply upgrades for energy damage and health. Same goes for if I apply a card with energy damage and attack speed, I can only add upgrades for energy damage and attack speed. If you're finding this confusing, you can check out my card building guide where I explain a lot more in depth on how this card system works. Again, we go for the red orb. You want to keep getting the red orb, especially if you're a damage dealing character. It's such a great advantage. And in the late game, when you've maxed out all your card points, which max out at 60, you want to try and go for the orbs because they're the only way you can increase your stats now. So now I'm just roaming through the jungle, feeling like Tarzan in this bitch. Run through a shadow pad which makes me temporarily invisible. Again, this is explained in my jungle video. I'm not really going to go into too much depth here just because it's more of an overview of the whole gameplay. So you can definitely check out my other videos if you want to see a more in-depth guide. Come up on Rampage here, except he blows up like a fucking pufferfish again, escapes using his leap, so I don't get a chance to pick him off. But he goes down eventually. I stupidly run through Steel's shield, so now I'm slowed. Howitzer uses his Make It Rain ability, and I try and find my ultimate where he lands, but again the ultimate is so slow at charging up that by the time he uses his ability, and he lands, and he has time to move, then I fire my ultimate. It just takes too long. You can see the area of effect of Howitzer's ultimate because those red lines appear. So the best way to avoid that is just jumping out of the red area and you'll save yourself a shit ton of damage. Yes, I cut the video. I was just running around the jungle like a loony, so you didn't really miss much. Now we're trying to push the final tower and then eventually get the inhibitor. At this point, we are really far ahead. I know I said that like quite a few times throughout this game, but we were really quite far ahead from the beginning. We had quite an experienced team, and I think in this game we were just playing some other people who hadn't really played Paragon, so it was pretty fair enough that we did steamroll them, I'd say. We took down this tower relatively easy without any resistance. But then, Twinblast and Howitzer decided to join the fight. You'll notice Howitzer takes the high ground, and that high ground is really good. You can actually, if you've got a Q that allows you to place an AoE effect on the ground, it'll actually aim all the way down. So I think that's a great advantage. You can just be spamming your Q, E, your R, or whatever from that high cliff, and no one can really touch you. You will have to come down eventually though, because your basic attack doesn't really work from that distance. Again, Howitzer uses his Make It Rain ability, but he dies in mid-air. Steel and Rampage, I don't know what they were doing, some coordinated acrobatics. Either way, they're going to go down relatively easy. Pick off Rampage here. Steel is definitely going to go down here. There's no chance of survival. I think I picked off like 3 or 4 kills. And did you notice that my shot actually went under his shield? The shield forms from the top coming down, so as the shield's coming down, you can still shoot under before the shield reaches the bottom. I think that's a great effect, and shows that Epic have paid a lot of attention to detail. Now we've taken all the enemy towers down, the next logical step is to take the inhibitors down. When you take the inhibitors down, they spawn super minions, which are really good at pushing lanes. Unless you have a hero in lane, the super minions will push all the way to the core and deal a lot of damage. One thing I didn't talk about when it comes to Murdock is that he has a shield. I never really used it in this game, just because I was never in a situation where I felt I was under threat, and as you can see I only died once, so I guess my decision was justified. But his shield is really powerful. He puts up a shield and I believe it absorbs 50% of the damage that you take, and if you hit an enemy with your shield, it's like a knockback effect. The enemy will get pushed back, so it's perfect if a melee character is trying to rush you. I think it'd be useful against Kalari and Feng Mao, but since none of the enemy team played as them, I didn't really need it. Here we decide to go for the Prime Orb. Again, if you're not sure how that works, you can check out my Paragon Jungle video, as that's a more in-depth guide. So we let Steel absorb all of the damage while we just lay into this creature. We pick up the Prime Orb, and you want to ideally give the Prime Orb to a character that either has crazy movement speed or a lot of health. When you get closer to depositing the Prime Orb, you want to give it to a hero that has a lot of health. So as you can see, Sparrow picks up the orb and then she runs through the jungle as quickly as possible with the team following behind. You have to deposit the orb in that flashing circle on the map. The enemy team will usually try to protect it, so what we did was we got Sparrow to drop the orb, give it to Steel because he had an insane amount of health, and then he carried the orb to the location. As you can see, the enemy team did try to protect the drop-off location, so it's important that we go as a team together and try and help Steel drop the orb off. Once he drops the orb off, there's really nothing they can do. The only way they can get rid of the buff is if we die. Rampage uses his Enrage ability. Even that is not enough to save him. He ends up leaping behind us, which just makes it even easier for Twinblast and I to pick him off. You'll notice that OP buff over our head. No, this does not stand for overpowered buff, although it quite literally is. It stands for Orb Prime buff. That means we successfully deposited the Orb Prime to the drop-off location, and now we reap the rewards. The way this buff works is you can select a Prime card which you add to your deck, which then, when the Orb Prime buff is activated, activates this card and you now gain these stats. This includes buffing your minions, increased damage, and various other stats. If you want a more in-depth guide, check out my Paragon Jungle video as I cover all this and more. Now the enemy team is pretty much dead and we've got the OP buff, we decide to go for the inhibitor. Like I mentioned, the inhibitor spawns super minions. So ideally you want to destroy all 3 inhibitors if you're struggling. But in this game we decided to just destroy this inhibitor and then immediately push the core. Rampage tries to defend the inhibitor, but at this point he's so far behind that we end up just killing him so quickly. You can see I crit 790 and I'm not even fully upgraded. I've still got 2 card slots left. And as you may have guessed, that orange floating thing is the core. Twinblast and Sparrow do their best to protect it, but really they've got no chance. Our minions are pushing, all 4 of us are pushing lane while Sparrow was back defending our base, because as you can see our core was taking some damage. It's at 96% health. The enemy core does this pulsing thing. I think it does some kind of damage, but it's not enough to kill us. I think it just deals more damage to minions than heroes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is pretty much game. The core goes down relatively easy, and that is your first look at a full Paragon game. I hope you enjoyed that video. Leave a like if you did. Comment down below on which heroes you'd like me to cover next. I've got some Gideon, Twinblast, Steel and Sparrow gameplay. My Gideon, Steel and Sparrow don't feature any commentary because I wanted you guys to enjoy it as much as possible, as if you were playing the game yourself. The Twinblast footage is actually really special. What I didn't realize at the time was that the footage that I got sent of Twinblast was actually a developer playing on the PC, but with a PS4 controller. So everything you see in that gameplay, it's how it looks like on the PS4. So I would definitely check that gameplay out, and I'll be giving my impression of the game on the PS4 in that video. So definitely check that out. This is kind of awkward. I thought you guys would have clicked a video now. Okay, seriously, can you just pick a video? Alright, fine. Since you couldn't decide, I'll give you a quick overview of each character. Gosh. Gideon's more like a mage character, so if you're interested in a ranged mage character who's got a super sick ultimate, which is a black hole, definitely check him out. Twinblast, like I mentioned, is footage on the PC but with a PS4 controller. Just a quick note, you don't need a driver to use your PS4 controller on Paragon on the PC, which is pretty cool. You get to see the PS4 controls in that gameplay, so you can see if you think the controls are well optimized. Sparrow again is similar to Twinblast and Gideon, a high damage ranged character, and Steel is an absolute tank, so if you want to play as a tank, definitely check Steel out. I would definitely suggest checking all this footage out because why not?